Now it's time for the return of our political panel, Bill Shorten and Christopher Pyne. Gentlemen, welcome, and my apologies that I offer you no merch. I'll just start with you, Bill. Would you go on Karl's show?
I already have.
Ah, OK.
Yeah, cue the music, dramatic music. Listen, I feel that this debate about who Karl interviews is a little inside baseball. By that what I mean is, you know, Karl probably doesn't mind you talking about who he's interviewed. It'll probably boost his podcast. Listen, I think there's a challenge in Australia that people of the left don't tend to go on TV shows of the right or forums of the right, and people on the right tend to not go on TV shows of the left. And part of the problem in Australia is that we just talk to our own tribes and not across tribes. I mean, I think, Sarah, you've been a leader in interviewing controversial right-wing politicians yourself, haven't you? Your Steve Bannon interview was one for the ages, I thought.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Let me throw this over to Christopher Pyne. I mean, Bill's making a serious... He's making a serious point. Of course, this came on the back of a week where the issues that Tommy Robinson and Karl Stefanovic were... Well, they weren't really discussing them. Tommy Robinson was talking about them and Karl was essentially just going along with what Tommy Robinson was saying. But our interest in this really comes out of the fact that we began talking about this issue of monoculturalism raised by Pauline Hanson. Obviously, Pauline Hanson has come to Karl Stefanovic's defence tonight. I want to ask you about Angus Taylor, though, Christopher Pyne, because yesterday, in the midst of all of this, he couldn't bring himself to use the word multiculturalism when he was challenged about it. Today, he cleaned that up a little bit, offered a qualified version of his support for multiculturalism. Why does Angus Taylor get tripped up on something that's been settled policy for so many decades?
Well, he doesn't need to, because, of course, the Liberal Party have been the father and mother of multiculturalism for many, many decades. It was Harold Holt that ended the White Australia policy. It was John Gorton that initiated many of the policies and principles we now take for granted in our multicultural society. Malcolm Fraser created SBS. Malcolm Fraser created the Office of Multicultural Affairs, and Petro Georgiou, a former parliamentary colleague of Bill's and mine, the member for Kooyong, was its very first Commissioner for Multicultural Affairs. So the Liberal Party has been at the forefront of multiculturalism for 60 plus years. It's one of the great achievements of the post-war Australian political era, and I think Angus should embrace our history of successful multiculturalism. I also noticed that Pauline this afternoon was talking about the Socceroos being a great example of monoculture. They're actually a great example of multiculturalism because, of course, as she was pointing out, there are so many different people in the team, players in the team from many, many different countries of origin, and yet they're all playing under the green and gold, under the Australian flag. So I think Pauline's example of monoculturalism is actually an example of multiculturalism. So I think we're getting into the semantics. What Pauline's really saying is she wants everyone to kind of support Australia, which I think we all get, but that's not a rejection of multiculturalism. It's an embracing of it, and I think Angus should embrace it as well.
Bill Shorten, are you sure that Christopher Pyne's got that right, that this is a kind of simple expression of the essential values of multiculturalism, just expressed in different terms? Is he right?
I think Chris was right in his description of the Liberal Party tradition. I mean, Menzies did significantly diversify Australia by accepting refugees from war-torn Europe. I mean, I do make the point that the Australian trade union movement then, who'd never experienced full employment, actually embraced the Menzies doctrine. But the Liberal Party's got a great tradition of multiculturalism up to the modern day. I think the Liberal Party would be in peril if it walked away from that. You can't out one nation, one nation. One nation does have 30% of support according to the polls, and people are allowed to support them. But there's 70% of Australia who are not supporting one nation. Multiculturalism's been the engine room of Australia. And I think that there was probably a lot of Australians of European heritage who might have been a bit one nation curious, if I can call it. They went off tap once they heard this monoculture stuff. I mean, I understand that Neos Cosmos, the Australian Greek newspaper, had an editorial sort of disagreeing with Senator Hanson, and they've never had such an online response. I mean, at the end of the day, multiculturalism is part of our success story. And I think that we need to be very careful about just telling Australians of Greek heritage, Italian heritage, of Indian heritage, of Chinese heritage, that you can't be proud of your own culture. They're all Aussies. They watch the AFL, but they like to send their kids to language school on a Sunday morning. I can live with that. I don't think that's un-Australian.
Christopher Pyne, is that...
I grew up going to Polish dancing lessons because one of my best friends was Gustav Cekovic, who's hopefully watching tonight.
Well, they still talk about the Pine polka.
Here we go.
The mazurka.
Now we know where we're doing the next episode, but let me just stick with you for the moment, Christopher Pyne. Does the leadership of the Liberal Party, Jane Hume was pretty clear about what multiculturalism is and her support for it today. Does Angus Taylor need to be less equivocal on this point? Are there risks for him in any kind of equivocation?
Well, of course there are. And, of course, John Howard learnt that lesson back in the 80s when he was leader the first time, and he was questioning immigration from different countries. And it was a disaster at the 1987 election, I think it was, 87. And he learnt that lesson and, of course, became a great supporter and embraced multiculturalism because it is a great success story. There's very few countries on the globe that can boast such a harmonious cultural mix as Australia can. And I do agree with Bill when he said before that there's no point in trying to out one nation. It doesn't matter what the Liberal Party says on some of the issues that One Nation are making their shibboleths. They can always just move very slightly further to the right, and the Liberal Party can't chase them. So trying to chase One Nation is a doomed adventure.
Yeah,
the Liberal Party needs to get the debate back onto the economy, and when we're talking about the economy, the Liberal Party does well.
All right, well, let's move on to an aspect of the economy, and maybe we'll come back to our shibboleth test later, Bill Shorten. I could see you wanted to come in on the shibboleth, but hold.
Well, I'm still trying
to
are there any,
say the word.
I just want to know if there are any.
Say it.
I want to know if there's any photos of your Polish dancing class, Christopher.
We definitely,
no, there aren't, sadly. I wish there were.
But we're going to we're going to do a reenactment.
No doubt.
We're going to do a reenactment, and with the benefit of AI, just to bring the era to up to date. But let's stay with the economy for a minute, because we have had a big week for the government here. They got their CGT changes through, thanks to the Greens. Now, what we're seeing, partly as a result of the CGT negative gearing changes, and also, of course, some of the interest rate changes that we saw in the lead up to the budget. But as a result, we're seeing house prices go down quite significantly. Bill Shorten, was it the aim of your policy when you tried to bring in similar measures to actually see house prices go down?
We wanted to ease the rate of growth of house prices. I think property in Australia and housing is still a great investment. You know, I congratulate the government for getting a deal. It wasn't just the Greens, it was the government. So I think that what we're going to see is more first home buyers able to enter the housing market, and that was the aim of the policy. And I would say to anyone who's perhaps being fueled by real estate agents and their scare campaigns, hang on to your house. Your house is still great value. And what it does mean is that perhaps what we'll have is the chance for more middle class and younger Australians and battling Australians to be able to join the great Australian dream.
Now, Christopher Pyne, when we discussed this at the time of the budget, you said that we wouldn't see big drops in prices, and we're not just looking at slow growth, we're actually looking at price drops. Are you surprised by what's happening?
Well, if house prices are slowing or dropping, it's got nothing whatsoever to do with the government's budget to do with capital gains tax or negative gearing, because neither of them have been introduced yet.
Exactly.
So you can't possibly take the credit for house prices slowing
or the blame
for measures that haven't been introduced. As I said last time we had this discussion...
Can't you have an impact once something is introduced before it's legislated? You don't think that has a psychological effect on
No, I think that is an extraordinary leap. That's an extraordinary leap of faith, Sarah, which I don't think one economist... I think if you could find one economist who said that house prices are slowing because of the government's budget, you know, I'd really want to check their credentials, quite frankly, because the measures haven't even been introduced.
That's right.
And won't be for some time. But as I said before, house prices will come down when we increase the supply of housing, and therefore it meets demand. and that has a big part to play in the states releasing more land for housing, and for local governments making it easier to build houses, and for state and federal governments reducing taxes on housing. All of those things will mean that there's more supply, and therefore it'll meet the demand. That's simple economics. I'm an economist. I used to be a lawyer and now a politician, of course, and now I'm a lobbyist.
And you're a champion dancer.
And a fixer. And a fixer. You were many things.
So many things. I can say something in Polish if you like before we finish.
Well, we'll finish on that. We will certainly finish on that. But
and you are also sorely missed. Your brand of Pyne, the peacemaker, policy, they miss you.
Now,
I'm not sure everybody thinks I was Pyne the peacemaker, Bill, but it's kind of you to say so.
Just coming back on the house prices, because you two appear to be on a unity ticket here that we're actually not seeing an impact at the moment. But there's millions of homeowners in the country, Bill Shorten. If price growth slows significantly and alters the way people think about that important asset that they own, they're going to turn against the government. Is there a risk, and perhaps an unforeseen risk here for the Albanese government?
I think that the government's taken a stand. I think one of the criticisms of the government had been that what did they stand for? What they clearly stand for is improving access to the housing market. Of course, there's more factors that go into housing than just negative gearing. Supply is crucial. But what it's going to do is it means that the unfair competition of a taxpayer subsidised investor against a hard-working couple trying to buy their first home, the playing field is being a bit more levelled. But I wouldn't, I see some of the real estate lobby clutching their pearls and predicting doom and gloom. Housing's still a great bet in Australia. So I think the real pressure now the deal has been done in the Senate is now going to be on the coalition. Because now when the law gets passed, then the question on the coalition now, the pressure goes from the government to the opposition. Will you, if you get elected, reverse the changes? And what will be cut as a result of reversing these changes? So I think the dynamic has gone back to the government, the initiative.
Now, since we've been...
Sarah,
yes, go on,
I think there's a big risk for the government, because in 2 years' time they'll be going to an election, and if house prices haven't markedly reduced in that time, Anthony Albanese's put a great deal of store, and Jim Chalmers, that this budget will reduce house prices. That's what all these measures are about. And yet a lot of that is out of the government's control. So betting on something that's out of your control, I think, is fraught with risk.
I just think it's interesting, Christopher Pyne, that you say you speak Polish, but you relentlessly mispronounce the name of our Prime Minister. It's something I find a deep puzzle.
His name is pronounced Anthony Albanese.
Well,
io parlo italiano, Sarah.
This is the week. It's the week of the World Cup, so go ahead.
So in my Polish, which I was taught by Mrs. Chekovich so that the people at the Polish folk dancing didn't sort of suspect that I was actually Irish, is Dzień dobry, moje imię jest Krzysztof, which means good morning, my name is Christopher.
Now
only Polish.
You say that. I've got a whole team of people in the control room right now checking that's what you said, and I'm going to be very nervous for the next 30 seconds.
Christopher, you are a walking advertisement for the strength of multiculturalism.
Thank you.
Right,
I salute you.
Mrs. Chekovich didn't tell me to say something rude, actually, but I have been saying that to a lot of Poles for a long time.
You are a contemporary Kosciuszko. You are just
Thank you.
the latest in a long
good.
line of Polish culture.
Very good.
Grazie mille. That's Italian, Bill. That's not Polish.
But you're welcome.
I can't do better than that. We're very much looking forward to our dance, the two of you. It is my pleasure to have you.
I lead, Chris.
To have you on my dance card.
Not with folk dancing. Folk dancing, you're in a line.
No,
be fine.
I lead.
See
no,
you
but
soon.
for the polka.
Dziękuję, Chris. See you, mate. Thanks very much indeed, you two.
Thank you.